My name is Linda Harper, and I am 68 years old. If someone had told me that the deepest wound of my life would come not from an enemy, but from the daughter I raised, I would have laughed in disbelief. Yet, on a quiet morning not long ago, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and opened my bank account on my laptop. My eyes locked on the numbers glowing on the screen. $450,000 had vanished overnight. But before I could call customer service, my phone buzzed with a text message that made my blood run cold. "Thanks for the house and the car, Mom." A little smiley face followed, as if this was some kind of joke. That message was from Emily, my daughter. I raised her as my own, poured every ounce of love I had into her. The betrayal I felt in that moment was far heavier than any financial loss. Emily thought she had outsmarted me. What she did not know was that she had just opened a door she would never be able to close again. When I arrived home later that morning, Emily and her husband Brian were waiting in the living room. Emily dangled a shiny set of car keys from her fingers while Brian leaned back with a smug grin. "Mom, we have something to tell you," Emily began. "We bought a house, a beautiful 3-bedroom place with a yard and, of course, a brand new car." I stood still, clutching my purse. "And where exactly did the money come from?" "From your account, of course. The savings you always kept for us, for our future. Brian and I figured it was only fair that after all your hard work, you help us get started." Brian nodded firmly. "You had the money sitting there, Linda. We thought you wanted the best for your daughter. Isn't this what any parent would do?" My chest tightened. "That was different," Brian muttered, shifting uncomfortably. "That was your duty as a mother, my duty, as if I was nothing more than an endless source of money." Emily crossed her arms. "Look, Mom, it's already done. And honestly, after years of acting like we were barely scraping by, I think I deserve this." I looked at her carefully, memorizing the smug curve of her mouth. She believed she had finally won. What they did not know, what they had never bothered to ask, was who I truly was. To Emily, I was the tired old woman who scrubbed a wife's floors for a paycheck. What Emily did not know was that I also built something lasting. Brick by brick, late nights after cleaning shifts, I studied business and accounting. Slowly, I created a logistics company that grew from one truck into a fleet. I kept my ownership quiet, letting others take the public spotlight, while I managed operations from the shadows. To Emily, I was just Mom. To the world of commerce, I was Mrs. Harper, founder and CEO. The account she raided was not my personal nest egg, was the operating account of Harper Logistics, the very account used to pay employees, suppliers, and taxes. By taking that money, Emily had not just stolen from me. She had stolen from 20 families who relied on their paychecks. What she did not realize was that she had committed a federal crime. The following morning, I sat in my car in the parking lot of Harper Logistics. I dialed Arthur, my lawyer and longtime accountant. "Linda," he said, "there's a serious problem. The bank flagged a withdrawal of $450,000. It came from the operating account." "I know," I replied quietly. "It was Emily, my daughter. Linda, that account isn't like a savings account. Any unauthorized use is classified as embezzlement. This isn't just theft, it's a federal offense. We need to act quickly." His words pierced me. Embezzlement, federal offense. "My own daughter. What are my options?" I asked, steadying my voice. "Two paths," Arthur explained. "We can try to recover the money privately, or we file an official report, freeze her assets, and let the legal system handle it. But once we go legal, there's no turning back." I closed my eyes. I had given her everything, and yet she had chosen to betray me. Arthur's voice cut through my thoughts. "Linda, what do you want me to do?" I opened my eyes. The betrayal stung, but so did the realization that Emily would never change if I kept shielding her. "Proceed legally," I said firmly. "She has to learn that actions have consequences." "All right," Arthur replied. "Then we start today." I hung up and leaned back in my seat. I was no longer just protecting Emily. I was protecting myself, my company, and the people who depended on me. It was the hardest choice I had ever made as a mother, but the only right one. By the next afternoon, everything was set in motion. The court had approved an emergency order to seize the assets Emily had purchased with my company's money. Officers arrived at her new house. The beautiful home she had boasted about was no longer hers. My phone began buzzing relentlessly. Calls from Emily, from Brian, from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all, but the text messages kept coming. At first, they were angry. How could you do this to me? You are destroying our lives. Then they turned desperate. Mom, please call me. We can work this out. Finally, they became pitiful. Please, I'm begging you. I'll give it all back. Just don't let them take me to jail. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, reading every message with a calmness that surprised even me. For years, I had jumped at every demand Emily made. This time, I did nothing. I let the consequences fall exactly where they belonged. That evening, I treated myself to something I had never dared before. I went shopping at the most exclusive mall in the city. I bought an elegant black dress, Italian leather shoes, and a handbag that cost more than Emily once earned in 3 months. For the first time in decades, I wasn't hiding who I was. While Emily and Brian sat in a cheap motel room, their dreams collapsing around them, I sipped champagne in the hotel lounge. Emily thought she had stolen my future. She had no idea that all she had done was give me back my power. News of the case spread quickly. By the time the trial began, the courthouse steps were crowded with reporters. Inside the courtroom, Emily sat at the defense table in a gray suit. Brian sat behind her, shifting uneasily. When our eyes met, Emily's were full of fear, not arrogance. For a moment, my mother's heart squeezed. Then I remembered her mocking message, and I hardened again. The prosecutor, Mr. Davis, rose. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not about a misunderstanding between family members. It is about a deliberate, calculated theft that endangered the livelihoods of 20 families employed by Harper Logistics. The defense attorney tried to counter. He painted Emily as a confused daughter who had grown up believing her mother was poor. His tone lacked confidence. Witness after witness took the stand. Arthur, my accountant, laid out the numbers with precision. Rosalie, my human resources manager, described the chaos caused by the missing funds. We couldn't make payroll on time. Employees thought the company was going under. Each testimony was like another brick laid on top of Emily's crumbling defense. When it was my turn, I walked to the stand slowly, feeling the weight of every sacrifice I had made as a mother. I told the jury about adopting Emily, about the years of struggle, about the decision to keep my business a secret. And then I told them about the text message. Thanks for the house and the car, Mom. Those words broke me more than the money ever could. During cross-examination, the defense attorney tried to rattle me. Miss Harper, isn't it true you are pressing charges out of revenge? No, I answered calmly. I am pressing charges because my daughter committed a crime. Forgiving her as a mother does not mean excusing her actions as a citizen. The jury listened intently. It was about accountability. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours before returning with their verdict. Guilty on all counts: embezzlement, fraud, and unauthorized use of financial instruments. Emily slumped in her chair, crying silently. Brian stood abruptly and stormed out, leaving her alone. 1 week later, we gathered again for sentencing. The judge, a stern man with a reputation for fairness, reviewed the evidence. Miss Harper, this court has considered not only the magnitude of your crime, $580,000 stolen over a period of months, but also your lack of regard for the people whose livelihoods you endangered. I sentence you to 6 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 4 years for good behavior. During your parole period, you are prohibited from contacting your mother without explicit judicial approval. The words fell like stones into the silent room. 10 years without contact. The bailiff approached, placing handcuffs on her wrists. She turned to me, her eyes swollen with tears. "Mom, please forgive me. Please don't let this be the end." I stood, my voice steady but not unkind. "I already forgive you, Emily, but forgiveness does not erase consequences. You are not in prison because I am cruel. You are in prison because you made choices that led you here." As she was led away, she kept her eyes on me, searching for a softness I could no longer afford to give. For the first time in her life, there was no manipulation, only fear and at last respect. 6 months passed after the sentencing, and my life began to look completely different. Without the constant turmoil of Emily's demands, the air around me felt lighter. Harper Logistics was thriving again. We secured 3 major contracts, expanded to 30 employees, and even opened a second office. I could focus fully on the business I had built with my own hands. But the most meaningful changes weren't professional. They were personal. I sold the old house where every room carried the echoes of arguments. In its place, I purchased a penthouse in the heart of the city. The wide windows overlooked the skyline. It felt symbolic, a new perspective, a higher place, a life reclaimed. I began to explore parts of myself I had long buried under the weight of motherhood. I enrolled in a painting class, booked a long, delayed trip to Europe, and started enjoying dinners at fine restaurants without guilt. I realized how many years I had denied myself joy in the name of sacrifice. Now I allowed myself to live fully. Friends who had drifted away returned, drawn not just by my success, but by the peace I radiated. They told me I seemed lighter, freer. For the first time in 24 years, I was not just Emily's mother. I was Linda Harper, businesswoman, artist, traveler, a woman who had finally chosen herself. The lesson was clear. When you set boundaries, you don't lose love. You gain respect, and sometimes you even gain back your life. 4 years later, a letter arrived in the mail with a return address that made my heart skip. Federal Correctional Institution. The restraining order had kept us apart, but she had received special permission to send me this one letter. "Dear Mom," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness. Don't expect a second chance. I only need you to know what these years have taught me." She wrote about the loneliness of prison, about the therapy sessions that forced her to face herself. She wrote about the question a counselor had asked that shattered her. "Can you name a single time you truly sacrificed for your mother?" Emily admitted she could not once. "I realized I wasn't your victim, Mom. I was your betrayer." Emily told me she was working at a bakery after her release, earning minimum wage and sending every extra penny toward restitution. "It will take me years to pay you back," she wrote. "But I want you to know I'm trying. Want you to know your strength saved me. You didn't destroy me. You forced me to finally grow up." I finished the letter with tears running down my cheeks. They weren't tears of regret or anger. They were tears of relief and maybe even of pride. For the first time in decades, I felt as if I had glimpsed the daughter I had always hoped Emily could become. I felt something shift inside me. For years, I had carried the weight of believing that unconditional love meant sacrificing myself. But life had taught me a harder, truer lesson. Love without boundaries is not love at all. It is surrender. When we surrender our dignity, we teach others to treat us with less than we deserve. Emily's story is about respect, about choices, and about the cost of confusing love with endless tolerance. And I learned finally that protecting yourself is not selfish. It is the first step toward genuine peace.